had all masters here. Yes or yes? And this is one of the masters, again, that so many other masters have learned from. And we all have many, many teachers. True or true? And this gentleman has actually been one of my teachers. And in my early days of understanding mind and laws of universe and how the whole thing really works, he was a person that I could really, really understand. And he's very down to earth and very, very clear and very powerful. Very what? Powerful. So I owe a lot of gratitude to him for my own success and the understanding and the introduction to universal principles and laws and how they work. He's actually regarded as one of the living masters of this arena in the area of human potential for over 40 years. How long, please? 40. That's before I was born, almost. It's not that funny. He is the best-selling author of the book, You Were Born Rich. And he has an amazing workshop called The Science of Getting Rich, which I know thousands of people have taken and had amazing results with. And he's transformed millions and millions and what? Millions of lives throughout the entire world. He is actually a direct link, or you want to call lineage, or whatever you want to call it, to the modern science of success and the laws of attraction that we talked about so frequently, stretching all the way back to Andrew Carnegie. And then Carnegie's Secrets inspired a book that a lot of you heard of called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, who personally basically mentored a gentleman by the name of Earl Nightingale, who personally mentored our next presenter. Cool or cool? Like a direct lineage is what I love here. Pass the baton right to him. He is an amazing trainer, amazing speaker. What I love about him most, he's got a huge heart. He's got a big what? He's got a huge heart. Say, huge heart. Let me hear you. Huge heart. And you know what? He's one of these people who's always wanting to give. Give. Support. You know, whenever I talk to him, Harv, how can I help you? And he wants to help everybody. And all the other trainers in the world, you know, we're not, you know, all the people on this stage, we kind of all work together. We're not very competitive. But of all of us, the least competitive and the most supportive and the most, how can I help you? How can I bring you two together? Oh, I know this person for you in England. I know this person for you in Australia. I can get you this over here. Always. How can I help you? How can I give you? With nothing in return. No, just complete unconditional support. That's a big heart. That's an enlightened person. That's an enlightened trainer. Yes or yes? How about a peak potential's welcome for Mr. Bob Proctor?
Wow. What an event. Thank you. Thank you.
Have fun, Bob.
How many of you have watched The Secret? The Secret. Almost everybody. If you take a look here, 100 years ago, Orville Wright said, "Isn't it astonishing that these secrets have been preserved for so many years just so we could discover them?" You know, they've been around for a long time. In 1959, Earl Nightingale brought out The Strangest Secret. And I started listening to it in 1961. That was a long time ago. But you know, The Strangest Secret it made just about as big an impact as The Secret has. And when you stop and think of this, I've been around this business for a long, long time. But you know, I have never seen anything that will equal what's going on here. In 39 years, I have never seen anything like this. I would like everybody to get up and give Harv, let me have your attention. Grab Harv there. He's not listening. Come on up here for a second. I want you to get on your feet and really recognize this guy. This is phenomenal. It is. It is absolutely phenomenal. Give him a real hand. Thanks, Harv. You know, in 39 years in the same business, you'll see a lot of things happen. I watched sales masters many years ago. They would bring in speakers and they would have big events. I don't know, do you remember sales masters? And then W. Clement Stone took it over and they put on big events. The Nightingale Conant Corporation put on the Human Resource Congress. But I was sitting up in my room looking out in the window watching everybody come in, and I was talking to my wife and I said, I have no idea where they're coming from, but the entire mountain is being populated. This is absolutely incredible. And Harv, I got to congratulate you. That was really something. You know? And Gail, yes. You know, there's an old saying I picked up a long time ago that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And when you think about it, what we're really talking about is lifestyle. And we've got one life. And one of the things that has been virtually ignored in education is money. We can go right through our educational system and come out and learn absolutely nothing about earning money. As a result, we've got 1% of the population that's earning 96% of all the money. And if you start talking about money in most circles, in most societies, people start to shoot you down. It's almost as if you're saying something bad. I have come to the conclusion that profit is a very, very honorable word, and we should never, ever shy away from it. We can do more good with money than we'll ever do without it. But it does have to be earned. We don't get it just by chance. You know, we say, the man that introduced me to all this said, money cannot talk, but it'll listen. And if you call it, it'll come. Well, I started to study this a long time ago. And what I'd like to do is ask you a couple of questions to start off here. How many of you came here with the hope of making some real serious changes in your life? Let me see a show of hands. See, virtually everyone. How many of you came here with the hope that you would find more time to do the things that you really want to do? You know, I was talking to Robert when he came off the stage, and he was mentioning that he was in a meeting that I put on. He was a student, and he has grown into the lead trainer with Harv's organization. And he said, Harv taught him how to earn money, and he became financially independent, and now he does what he loves doing all day long. I think that's something that everyone should do, and everyone can do. It's just that most people have a problem with it. How many of you would really like to make a serious change in your income? Quite a few of you. Well, you see, we have these ideas. We'd like to do these things. Some of us would like to change both, more time and money. How many fall into that category? Well, you know, The Secret come out, and I've never seen anything cover the globe in this business like The Secret did. It just took off right from the word go like a rocket. Now, do you know, it's a strange thing, but it was just 2 years ago that I got a call from Glenda Byrne, Rhonda Byrne's sister. And I got this call, and it was very garbled on my cell phone that I couldn't really understand the name, and I was having difficulty with the number. It sounded like an Australian cell number. And so I just kept hitting pound and putting the call off. I didn't delete it, but I didn't get it. Around 3 or 4 weeks later, Gina Hayden, who's been working with me now for over 20 years, I was cleaning up my phone, and I said, Gina, try this number. I think the person's name is Glenda, and I think this is the phone number. It sounds like an Australian cell phone number. And there's something about a film. I don't really know what it is. Now, I had it on my phone for a good 3 weeks. Gina phoned me back, and she said, no, you had the right name and the right number, and it's a film crew that's in from Australia, and they're shooting a film. And the person that's in charge of it really wanted you in it. Apparently, your book was the only book that she read flying from Australia to America. And they've got this crew in, but they're going back next week. And she said, we're going to be shooting in Aspen all weekend. And Gina said, isn't that strange? Bob's doing a seminar in Aspen this weekend. And I hadn't been here for a couple of years. So here I was in the hotel right beside them. I flew in, walked down, sat down for a couple of hours, walked out, and then everything started happening. And you know, it was months later, it was in February, I guess, when I got a FedEx with a DVD in it. Now, I get a lot of DVDs, and I don't see them all. So this one I had sitting on the table, and finally I said to my wife, I said, why don't we watch this thing? And I put it on, and I just knew that it was going to catch on. But I never dreamt it would catch on the way it has. Millions of people all over the globe. I was going through Hong Kong a few months back, and that's all you could see in the airport. It was all over the place. It doesn't really matter where you go. We had people in for a seminar from Israel a couple of weeks ago, and it's catching on there. It's all through the Nordic countries. But you know, in all the studying of it, and the number of people that are getting it, I have found that in all the self-help books, most people are still having a problem. Now think about this for a moment. For many people, something is missing. It's not working. You know, I go back to the Strangest Secret record by Earl Nightingale, and then the Think and Grow Rich book. And I think of all the books that have come out since then, because back around 1960, Maxwell Maltz had just released his book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and self-help books were hard to find. There just wasn't a lot of them around. Today, they top the bestsellers list, so they're everywhere. We have seminars going on all over the globe. We have all kinds of DVDs and CDs going on. This is all being recorded, so you're going to have material from this that'll scatter all over the globe. But yet, there's a lot of people that are having a problem. It's just not clicking. They're not making it work the way they want. How many of you are having a difficulty getting this to really click for them? Wait a minute, let me try this a different way. How many of you can hold your arm above your shoulder? Let me see if you can get your arm up. All right. How many of you are having difficulty really getting it to click? And quite a few hands went up. Well, you know, that's what I found. Now, I go back to the Strangest Secret record, and there's Earl Nightingale receiving a gold record for it from Columbia Records. Now, that was the first record outside of the entertainment industry that had sold over 1 million copies. So do you see, even way back then, this was catching on and people were studying it. Now, I wanted more time and more money. I was sitting in a fire hall in Toronto. I had no formal education. I had no time and no money. It seemed like I was spending all my time just trying to make enough to pay bills, and I could never catch up. And so this is something that I wanted, and I just didn't seem to be able to make it happen. Then I got into Think and Grow Rich, along with the science, or the Earl Nightingale's record, The Strangest Secret, and my whole life began to change. My income went from $4,000 to $175,000, then it went over $1 million. But you know, I had a problem because I had the law of attraction working. I had never heard of the law of attraction really. It was in the books, but I hadn't really zeroed in on it as a cause. So I had it working, but I didn't know what was working. I didn't know what was happening. And I have found that most people that are highly successful in anything cannot articulate on why they are. I was doing a seminar in New York City a number of years ago, and at the end of the seminar, this great big guy come up to me, and he said, you know, Bob, I really want to thank you for what I got out of this weekend. He said, you know, this is the first time that I have understood what I did. And I looked at him, I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I won the gold medal in the decathlon in the Olympics in Melbourne, Australia in 1956. Because I won the silver medal in Helsinki in 1952. But I never understood till this weekend exactly how I accomplished that. You see, it's a mental game we're playing. And most people really don't understand it. They have a problem with it. Now, there's the two men that were mentors of mine, Earl Nightingale and Lloyd Conant. And these two guys literally changed the course of my life. Now, I was fortunate enough to have met a man prior to that, Ray Stanford. And Ray got me into Think and Grow Rich, and that led me into The Strangest Secret. But you know, when he sat down with me and he started to explain that I could have anything I wanted, I could do anything I wanted, I didn't believe it. Yet you see, the key to this is you've got to believe. Now, I have found out that our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. And frequently, when we reevaluate a situation, our belief about that situation will change. Now, I really didn't believe I could change, but I believed he believed I could. I mean, he was adamant. And he said, if you just do what I've suggested, you can have anything you want. Now, I don't know why. I had people before that were trying to help me from the time I was a little kid, and none of them ever reached me. But for some strange reason, I listened to him. And as I listened to him, I thought, I'm going to try what he says. And my whole world changed. Now, when it changed, I didn't know why it had. I thought it was the book and the record that I was listening to. And so I'd buy those books and the records and I'd give them to everybody I knew. But nothing was happening with them. I have gone into some of the largest companies in the world, yet their top performers don't know why they're top performers. And they have industrial psychologists shadowing these people, trying to figure out what makes them so good at what they're doing. Some of them aren't very bright. Some of them are intellectual giants. But they all have one thing in common. They're performers. They produce. And so I thought somebody has to know why I changed. And they've either written it about it or they're talking about it. So I made up my mind I'd read every book that was ever written if I had to. And I began to study. And then I started to think of Earl Nightingale. And I went to visit him because I was listening to this record. It was just a voice on a record player. And I went to visit him. And I had been studying his stuff for quite some time. But when I was leaving his office, I remember this as if it was yesterday. I said to him, Earl, if you could give a person just one suggestion, what would it be? Well, he said that would be very easy. I would just tell him to find out what he loves doing and then dedicate his life to it. Now, he said, the problem with most people is they don't know what they love doing. And you know, I had a feeling of excitement come over me right then because I knew what I loved doing. You see, I was working with people and I was working with them with these ideas. But I never really thought of that at the time. I wanted to do what he was doing, and I knew it. And I left his office that day, and I made up my mind I was coming back there, but I was going to come back and work with him. No, I think I got the idea from Think and Grow Rich, where a chap named Barnes wanted to be associated with Edison. Now, I was prepared to pay them to let me work there. I took an enormous cut in income to go to work there. I took a job at $18,000 a year, and 5 years later, I was earning $33,000. But I didn't go there to earn money. I went there because I wanted to watch him. I wanted to study him. And I got a double benefit because I got Lloyd Conant in the bargain. And Lloyd was a business genius. And so those two men that you see on the screen are literally the guys that had a major impact on my life. And I went to work with them. Now there's me with them in 1968. Now, if you can see this picture clear, Earl has a pretty good sense of humor. And he's looking at Lloyd, and he's probably saying, "You think this kid's ever going to put on any weight?" But you know, this was a most phenomenal experience because this was the company that started this industry as we know it today. And I was working there with them every day. And I set a goal of being vice president of sales just so I would have an office right beside Earl's. And so I got to know the people that visited him, and I got to study the books he studied and subscribe to the magazines that he subscribed to. Yet it was a phenomenal experience. Now, I'm from Canada, and I was living in a hotel. Wow. But I was living in the Lincolnwood Hyatt House, which I believe is gone now. And every once in a while, Lloyd would take pity on me, and he'd invite me to his home for dinner. And so one night I was over there having dinner, and we had dinner in the kitchen. He had this enormous kitchen. And he had a sound system in his house where when he put a record on, because it was all records in those days, the record played throughout the house. If you come into my house, I've got a sound system that goes throughout the house. So it follows you wherever you go, and I know where I got the idea to do that. But I was sitting in the kitchen having dinner, and after dinner, I asked Lloyd, I said, "Lloyd, how did you start this company?" Because you see, he didn't start a company, he started an industry. Yet whenever Lloyd would explain something like that, he'd sit and he'd put his hand up and he'd go somewhere. I didn't know where he was going, but I always wanted to go with him. And he explained that someone gave him a little book, a little green book. Yet he said, "I studied it all weekend. And then I made up my mind on Monday I would start a world-class organization." Well, I wasn't interested in how he started the company anymore. I wanted to know what was the name of the book. Did he have another book? And so he gave me a copy, and it was the Science of Getting Rich book. Yet it's a phenomenal little book. And I began to study that in 1968, and I have never stopped. Now, oddly enough, that is the book that inspired Rhonda Byrne to make The Secret. So you see, there's links here as you go through. If you start to study a little history, you're going to find that there's golden threads run through things. Yet, if we're wise, we will follow wise people who have gone before us. And you know, when we do that, our whole world begins to change. Now, I started to study that book, and I made up my mind that if Lloyd found it interesting enough to guide his life, I was going to use it in mine. And so I began to study it. Now, I started then Life Success group of companies. I got to a point where I didn't want to just sell tapes or records anymore. I wanted to teach this information because I knew there was an element missing. I would see people buy this stuff and they'd have it sitting on shelves. Sometimes they didn't even open it. But they had all this material. They had these great libraries of books. Yet they were struggling. They weren't making it financially. They weren't really excited about how they were spending their days. And so I said to Lloyd, "Why don't we sell a seminar and give them the recordings?" And he looked at me like I'd fallen out of a tree. And he said, "No, I don't think so, Bob." And so I said, "Okay." I had been there 5 years. I knew it was time for me to leave. And so I left, and I decided that I was going to go out and teach this because I believe you can earn all the money you want. There is absolutely no limit to what you're capable of doing. Now, we have a huge challenge in life, and it costs us both time and money. Yet it's something that very, very few people really study. It's called paradigms. Oh, I know most people have heard the word. Some of you have even studied it. But I can assure you, if you held up your hand, that you're having difficulty getting to click, there's your problem. That is definitely your problem. And it was through studying this Science of Getting Rich and working with Lloyd that I started to understand that. And I made up my mind I was going to teach it. You see, paradigms shape our logic. Yet one time, Our paradigm is our habitual way of thinking. At one time, everybody believed the world was flat. Well, almost everybody. Yet it was logical to think that way. Yet one time, it was logical to think that planes couldn't fly. Yet everybody bought into that idea. If they dropped something, it would go down. Just see, our logic is controlled by our paradigm. If a person's paradigm produces their results, yet if they're earning $50,000 a year, it's illogical to think that they could earn $50,000 a month. You're going to find that everyone that has done anything of any consequence is totally illogical relative to the masses. Do you know that our logic shapes our perception? Yet dictates how we see things. Our perception is our point of view. As we start altering our perceptions, our whole world changes. We want to change our point of view toward ourselves. That's what really changed my life. How do you see you? Have you ever spent any time just thinking about the electrical system in your body? I've got to work on some kind of a documentary here today where they're talking about energy. Yet, you know, I was thinking about it. If you have a house and you have an energy system in the house, there's an electrical system. You have different outlets. Yet it's governed by law. Well, the same thing with ourselves. Yes, we start to understand our own electrical system and start to understand that our brain is an electronic switching station. Our perception of ourselves starts to shift. Yet, as it does, our life changes. Our perception is changing almost everything in our life. Yet it's going to dictate how we use our time. Our paradigms dictate how we make use of our time. Now think of this for a moment. Everyone, this is everyone, there's no exceptions, gets exactly the same amount of time. They get all there is. So it's what we do with our time that makes the difference. Now think of that for a moment. I remember one time I was going on a speaking engagement with Earl Nightingale, and he asked me, it was downtown Chicago, and he lived in downtown Chicago at the time, and he asked me if I'd like to meet him for breakfast. Well, yes, you know, and I always had a half a dozen questions prepared for whenever I was alone with him. And I remember I was sitting there having breakfast with him, and the guy fascinated me. He always did, always. And I remember the first time I went in to see him, I noticed on his credenza, he had his desk and the credenza was beside his desk, there was a picture of himself and his wife being introduced to the Queen. And I looked at it and I thought of a piece of scripture in Proverbs that says, "Seest thou a person diligent in their business, and they'll stand before kings." And I thought that's literally accurate right to today. He had the largest syndicated radio broadcast in the history of the broadcasting industry. He had multiple companies, and I never saw him hurry. He fascinated me. Yet, so I asked him at breakfast this morning, I said, "Earl, how did you learn to master time management?" You know, I can still hear his fork hit the plate, and he looked up at me. He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Nobody masters time management." He said, "Time can't be managed." He said, "We merely manage activities." And he said, "I just write down on a piece of paper what I want to do tomorrow, and I do it. And I don't let people or conditions or circumstance distract me." And that was a great lesson. We manage activities. And you're going to find that all the top producers, they don't try to manage time. They manage activities. But you see, our paradigm dictates how we use our time. Our paradigm is going to dictate our happiness. You'll ask the person, you know, what's their goal? And they want to be happy. Well, that's not a goal. It may be the symptom of having goals. Then our paradigm affects our relationships. See, our paradigm controls the vibration we're in. That dictates who we associate with. Yet we're attracted towards people who are much like ourselves. If you don't like your friends, you should be doing a little inventory of yourself, because we're attracted to people that are like us. And last but not least, our paradigm dictates how much money we will earn. Now, I'm of the opinion we should always be wanting to earn more money. If we've got more money than we need, we're not doing what we should be doing. Money is just used for two things. It's used to make you comfortable, and if you're comfortable, you can be more creative. Harv was talking about competition. I don't compete with anybody. If you're competing, you're not creating. If you're creating, you're not competing. You're dealing with an infinite source. Why would you compete with anybody? It's an indication of ignorance. Now think. What we want to do is ask ourselves, how do I want to live? Then realize money will enable you to do that. So one is to make you comfortable. Now the other use of money is to extend the service that you render far beyond your own presence. Now, I made up my mind years ago, I wanted a company that operated all over the world. And now we have a group of companies that operates all over the world. We have a publishing company, Life Success Publishing. We help people put books out all over the world. We have a consulting company where we teach people to teach our information. Life Success Consultants are all over the world. We just completed a class from 12 different countries with 140 people. None of this happened by accident. It happened because we decided. We started a coaching company, the same thing. Now, to do these things, it costs a lot of money. I wouldn't even want to take a stab at what Harv went on the hook for to do this. But it costs a lot of money. Well, you say, then you earn a lot of money. But that's the deal. Yet you try and spend money on something that's going to earn you money so you can go out and do something in a bigger way. That's all it's for. Money is a magnifier. It'll make you more of what you already are. If you're not a nice person, you're going to become unbearable. If you are a nice person, you're going to become a nicer person. So what we're really talking here about is paradigms. Now, Joe Barker wrote a book on paradigms, and he said to ignore the power of paradigms to influence your judgment is to put yourself at risk when exploring the future. So you see, this is a subject that you want to take super serious. Now, I am not sure what ideas the other speakers gave you. I'm sure they were valuable, but there's none that's more valuable than this. Find out what your paradigm is doing to you, how they're formed, how they can be changed. Then go about changing it. Make a decision right here, right now, that you're going to do that. Now, you might ask, what is paradigms? What are paradigms? Well, I have studied a lot of books, but there's the simplest definition. It's a multitude of habits. Culture is paradigm. I've gone into many countries, many cultures, and I have found when you get past the culture, people are essentially the same. They wear different clothes, they eat different foods, their skin's different color, they speak different language. But when you get past all that, we're all spiritual beings living in physical bodies, and we're corresponding with the material world. That operates in an orderly way. And as we learn these laws, we start moving in the right direction. So you see, this is something that I think we really want to look at. Now, they're not only habits, they're other people's habits. We inherited these habits. I tell a story that puts the point across pretty well. When I met my wife 30 years ago, we went out shopping, and I said, I think I'd like some turnip. She said, okay. So I picked a turnip up, and she said, what are you going to do with that? I said, I'm going to eat it. Well, she said, I'm not eating that. Well, I said, why not? It's a turnip. She says, that's the root of the turnip. I said, what? I'd never thought of it as a root. It was a turnip. But I got thinking it probably does grow underground. I just always got them at the store. Well, I said, what do you eat? She said, we give that to the pigs. I said, what do you eat? She says, we eat the green of the turnip. Well, I says, isn't that the damnedest thing? We give that to the pigs. Now, you see, I was born and raised in northern Ontario. She was born and raised in southern United States, in Birmingham, in Alabama, and Pensacola. So, totally different cultures. We just don't eat turnip, you see. Now, I put it back in the bin, and I went wandering through the store, and I thought, I wonder who decided we'd eat the root of the turnip. Now, my grandmother pretty well raised me. My mother was always working. We didn't know where my dad was. And I thought, I don't think Grandma decided that. Must have been her parents. Then I started to wonder, how far back in our family tree would I have to go to find out who decided we'd eat the root of the... Then I thought, how far back in her tree would I have to go to find out who decided they'd eat the greens? Then I started to get confused. Then I thought, who the hell cares? Yet it didn't really matter, but the principle mattered. Then I started to wonder, how many other things are we doing that someone years ago thought of, yet we just do it? No one in our family ever went to school. 15, 16, the question was, are you going to go? I said, hell no, I'm out of here. I started to study this before my kids were born. I just changed one question. I didn't ask if they were going to go. I asked them where they were going to go. It changed the whole family. You see, we've got to think about these paradigms. Now, one of the most limiting concepts that we've ever worked into our paradigm is this. We've been conditioned to live from the outside in. And it starts very early. As a little kid, then you go to school and you get the report card. The report card tells you what kind of a student you are. It tells the teacher, tells the parent, tells everybody. Do you know what the report card does? The report card tells you where the student's mind was for a few minutes, maybe a few weeks ago. It has nothing to do with the student. But we didn't know that. And that report card turned into a sales sheet, yet turned into a balance sheet. And we were always looking outside to see how well we're doing. Yet we're always letting our results control our thinking. If we're going to get what we want, we've got to live from the inside out, not from the outside in. Do you know, Huxley put it very well. He said, there's only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. The deal's strictly between you and yourself. There's nobody else that's involved. Now, the question is, can I change my paradigm? You see, that was the question that was fluttering around my mind when I sat down with Ray Stanford many years ago. I wanted to know if I could really change my life. Now, I didn't understand paradigms. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if he did. But that was the question. Because you see, a paradigm literally controls our life. And if we're going to change our life, we've got to change the paradigm. So that question becomes very important. And the answer to it is an emphatic yes. Now, I have gone into federal penitentiaries. Not for a while, but I went in one Saturday a month for 5 years. And it was when I got that message across to some of those people that their whole life changed. One person had been sentenced to 27 years. He was considered a mad dog by the warden. He had been in solitary confinement for 7 years when I met him. And I told him he was focused on why this wouldn't work. And I started to work with him. And you know, his whole life changed. He got out on a special parole. I had the parole board tear up his parole, give him a passport. He came to England with me when I opened an office there. His whole life changed. That's just one example. But when he was convinced that I was convinced I could help him change, that's when his life started to change direction. And right up until he passed away a few years ago, he was a totally different person. Now, I could go on and tell you all kinds of stories. I went into the Prudential of America 30 years ago. They had never had one person write $5 million a year in business. I met about 250 of them in the first meeting. I said, any of you could do that this year. This guy came up to me and he said, Proctor, have you ever sold insurance? And I said, no, I never have. He said, I didn't think so. And I said, why are you saying that? He said, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I said, hold on a minute. I do know what I'm talking about. I just said I've never sold insurance. No, I said, if you were listening to me, I wasn't talking about insurance. I was talking about you. I said, you already know how to write $5 million. Your problem is you don't know why you're not doing it. He looked at me and he said, you know there's 20,000 agents in this company? I said, yeah, I'd heard that. He said, well, have you heard this? We have never had one write $5 million, yet the company is going to be 100 years old next year. Well, I said, then you could be the first. He said, you said we could do it this year. The year's over half gone. It was in August. Well, I said, then it isn't going to take you as long to do it. Now, this is all recorded in the Prudential's books. They published it in magazines. Second week in December, he had $5,200,000 worth of business in the books, closed the year with a little better than $6 million. Now, some years ago, that was a lot of business. But there was a whole string of people following them. Yet their sales went up by hundreds of millions of dollars in that company. And all we were doing, yes, just showing them how to shift the paradigm. Not a lot, just a little. Remember what we said, paradigms are habits, a multitude of habits. I was showing them that, and then I said, now don't try and change it all at once, work on one or two. When a person thinks they cannot change, they're stuck. That person has no hope. When a person has no hope, they're just existing. Now that's the way I was living when I met Ray Stanford. That's the way Joe was living in Kingston Penitentiary. That's the way those agents were in the Prudential. I have watched kids in school go from a C and D average to an A and B average almost overnight. See, we got it inside, yet it's the paradigm that's stopping it from coming out. We've got to change that. Now, when you know that you can change it, you have hope. And listen, when you have hope, that means you have options. Now, when a person has options, they know they can do whatever they want. It's like when Robert came off the stage and he said, Harv taught me how to earn money, how to become financially independent. Now I can spend my days doing what I love doing. What he was really saying is, I have options. If you have got the paradigm blocking your road, you don't have options. Every now and then you do what you want, but generally you're not. Now, that's rather sad. Now, how can our paradigms be changed? Well, it takes a lifetime commitment to a daily program of self-improvement. You'd say, God, that's big. No, it isn't. You've made a lifetime commitment to feed your body. You've made a lifetime commitment to groom yourself, to wash your body. You've made a lifetime commitment to sleep. These are things that are programmed right into our mind. Well, do you know, when we make a lifetime commitment to studying, everything in our world changes. Now keep thinking about this. Take a look at this guy on the screen. I've known this man for many, many years. Okay? And he's a very successful guy. Now, let me read you something here. I'll just get on my computer and I can see it easier. This is an article that was just a week old. Said this man left school in grade 9 and was a millionaire by the age of 28. Down a little further, yet said now at 76, he's building a new business, Kids Ride to Riches, that teaches children money management. Then he was asked by the interviewer, what was the inspiration for Kids Ride to Riches? This is his answer. Kids came to Skyloft. Skyloft was a ski resort that he owned in Canada. Kids came to Skyloft during the week to learn to ski. I would see kids in the cafeteria with $10 or $20 bills. I'd ask them where they got the money. They said from mom and dad. Then I said, do you know where they got the money? Well, they didn't know. He says these kids need to be taught something about money management. Now look here. At the bottom of the caption, it says, Doug Maharg has had many careers. Now he teaches children how to manage money. Now, he says, Harv uses jars. He said, I went and bought these wooden cigar boxes. And he's teaching the kids now about money. But here's the interesting thing. I met Doug for breakfast here, a few weeks back. And he told me that he had just bought all of Harv Ecker's courses. One payment, everything that he does. I said, what'd that cost you? And he told me, and I said, yeah, that's pretty interesting. You know? Now, he's been coming to seminars I've put on for as long as I can remember. Here's a guy, he's been a millionaire, multimillionaire for over 40 years. He's 76 years old. Yet he's sitting here right in the front row. Stand up, give him a hand. You want to talk to him about his program, Kids Ride to Riches. But here's the point. If we go back, I'm saying it takes a lifetime commitment to personal growth. I made that commitment years ago. I never stopped studying. Now, I don't have to work. Well, that's not true. I do have to work. Because that's how you get your satisfaction. That's not how you earn money. Working's the worst way to earn money. Doug doesn't need the money. But why is he doing it? Because he wants to grow. Yet, as we set these targets and go after something in a bigger way, our whole life changes. Now, this article came out on Saturday, June the 30th. It's just a week ago. And I had breakfast with him the other morning, yet he was explaining all this to me. My grandson was in his meeting, and I asked Danny about it, and Danny said it was really good. The kids were getting good stuff. Well, you see, that's what all kids should get. But if the kids are going to get it, who are they going to get it from? They got to get it from us. People say you got to get into school systems. No, you got to get into the homes. They'll get into the school systems. You see? You try and change the administration systems in most schools, you'll have difficulty. But get the parents. Then you'll hear somebody say, well, one person can't change the world. One person changed my world. You can change people's worlds. Now, you and I think in pictures. We do. You know, think of a feather. You don't think F-E-A-T-H-E-R. You see a feather. Think of a hot air balloon. You don't think H-O-T. You see a hot air balloon. Now, here's the question. What does your mind look like? Now, I want you to think of this for a moment. When you hook up your concept of what the mind looks like With paradigms, most people will have a confused state because they don't know what the mind looks like. No one's ever seen the mind. There was a doctor in San Antonio, Texas, way back in 1934, and he was very involved in the healing arts. I was fortunate enough to study with a good doctor that studied with this man. Yet he said, if we don't quit treating symptoms, we're never going to have healthy people. And he was very involved in the holistic concept of health, as most of you are. All thinking people are. Now, as he pointed out, we are spiritual beings, we have an intellect, and we live in a physical body. He said, we're just treating the body. And we said, we're doing that because we have no concept of what the mind looks like. Yet he said, we need to build an image of the mind. Now, he sat down and he drew this picture. And I'm going to tell you something. Of all the ideas I have learned, this has to be the most valuable. He said, let that represent the mind and the body. Now he said, we're going to take the mind and divide it into two parts. There's the conscious and the subconscious. Now, I know you've read this in books. You get into Murphy's book on the power of the subconscious. It's one of the best you'll ever read, but can still leave you in a confused state because we're reading words and we're getting pictures, but they don't come together. If you don't have a picture of the person, you're going to have difficulty understanding this concept. If we can put that back up there. If you let the conscious mind represent the thinking mind, and the subconscious represent the emotional mind. When you think in pictures, so you get an image on the screen of your conscious mind. This is where we gather information too. But you see, you can have information in your conscious mind, it's not going to do you any good. You've got to take and impress that upon the emotional mind. And when you do, it must be expressed through the body because the body's the instrument of the mind. The body is the only instrument where the conscious and subconscious working together can express themselves. And your results or your actions produce your results. Now, you see, it's your results you want to change. If you're going to change the results, you've got to change what's going on inside. Now, 9 out of 10 people, when they start thinking of the mind, they get very confused. Most people think of the brain as the mind, but the brain isn't the mind any more than your fingernail is. See, our body is a molecular structure. Yet it's a mass of molecules and a very high speed of vibration. And the vibration the body's in, it's controlled by what's going on in the subconscious mind. Now, you can change your vibration temporarily without any difficulty. It's changing it permanently. Because this is where the paradigm is. Your conscious mind can think, yet can accept or reject. Yet can accept what I'm saying or it can reject what I'm saying. Yet has that ability. Your subconscious mind doesn't have that ability. Yet it'll accept anything you give to it. Yet it has no ability to reject. It's totally deductive in its nature. Yet it cannot tell the difference between what's imagined and what's real. Yet just accepts images as reality. So we build the images and that's where our life goes. Now, it's the results you want to change. You've got to get in and understand what's going on in your subconscious mind. Now, there's the baby that arrives on the scene. No conscious faculties developed. Do you know at birth a baby is a linguistic genius? You can teach a baby any language. If you have a new baby, you can teach the baby to read right now before the baby can talk. When it can talk, you can give it a book on the CAT scan and it'll read it to you. You'll say, well, I don't believe that. Well, you don't have to believe it. You've got the ability to reject what I'm saying. Person says, well, I don't believe that. Well, then they wouldn't do it, would they? Go on Google. Look for the name Glenn Doman, D-O-M-A-N. Do a little research into what he's doing. He's taken kids that were considered vegetables and brought them back to a normal state. Yes, he points out there's no such thing as mental retardation. That's a misnomer. There's only brain damage. The mind is perfect. And we've got to understand this. Now, what's ever going on around that baby goes right into that baby's subconscious mind. So what we have to do is ask ourselves, what was it like when I was a baby? What did the people around me think? It's not just what they say. You hear people spelling in front of kids. This is so absurd. You're transferring images from your mind to their mind right through the medium of the molecule. It's thought transference. Those images are going into the baby's mind. I grew up in poverty. If anybody had a job, they were considered lucky. I wake up and thank God I don't have a job every day. Now look at the ideas that go in there over and over and over again, they become fixed there. That's how the mind becomes conditioned. We're conditioned to speak the language we speak. We're conditioned to eat the food we eat. We're conditioned to live the way we live. We're conditioned to meet and greet people the way we meet and greet people. We're conditioned to study or not study. See, the conditioning is better known as the paradigm. This is the program. You and I have had a program written. Now, when you go to change that paradigm, what you want to understand, yes, the vast majority of people are operating on the same kind of a program. Now, after that program has been well saturated into the baby's psyche, and you've got to understand the subconscious mind's in every cell of the body, and the baby develops the conscious faculties, what is that baby going to think? The baby isn't a baby anymore. The self-image is in the paradigm. What the person can do is in the paradigm. It's pathetic when you think of what's in most people's subconscious mind. Yet you see, we can study, but when we're studying, we're getting the idea on a conscious level. This is the intellect. This is what school has been interested in. How much of this can you remember? How much of this can you answer questions on? They don't even pay any attention to the paradigm. This is why we have people who are intellectually absolutely brilliant, and the results are pathetic. You have people that are absolutely brilliant and they're broke. You have other people who are functionally illiterate. They can neither read nor write, and they're multimillionaires. You see, the subconscious mind is where the paradigm is. Now, this is what you want to burn into your mind. Your intellect is grasping what I'm saying right now. Yet your intellect that's taking notes. You are hearing what I say. You're seeing the drawing. Yet it's more school stuff that you're getting in your intellect. It ain't going to do you any good unless you internalize it. Think of this for a moment. The law of attraction responds to the paradigm, not to the intellect. If you're having difficulty getting this information that you're getting here from Harv and the other speakers, from the other seminars, from all the books you're reading, if you're just having difficulty getting it to work, it's the paradigm. You see, if I go back to the early 60s, here I am, no business experience, no formal education, 2 months high school. I had an absolutely horrendous work record, and my income goes, whoa, right up over $1 million. I started cleaning floors. I was prepared to do anything honest to earn money. I had a goal of earning $25,000. I didn't really believe it. Do you know in less than 5 years, I was cleaning floors in Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, London, England. Whoa! I just did exactly what the book said. What I really did was change the paradigm. See, I thought it was the book. It wasn't the book. I thought it was the record. It wasn't the record. Yet it was the repetition of it. I was getting emotionally involved, and I was cutting away from the people I was associating with. I was driving around with a battery-operated record player, playing records in my car. I wouldn't recommend it. I almost killed myself a number of times. Broke records, bent fenders. But I was addicted. And you see, what I was doing was changing the paradigm and didn't know it. Do you know that most people are extras in their own movie? They really are. It'd be so easy for you to look at me standing here and think, oh, he can. Or watch Harv, oh, he can. Or Robert, oh, he can. Or look at Doug, oh, he can. But me, not me. Do you want to know something? The only difference between you and Doug Maharg, or you and Harv, or me, is results. Yeah, it's awareness. It's understanding. We're all operating with exactly the same power. There is only one power. We're all operating with exactly the same law. It's that some of us have shifted our paradigms. And you know that you can go into almost any major corporation. We've just started a new division in our company to go back and start working in major corporations. But you can go into almost any major corporation. They do not know why their top performers are top performers. If they did, they'd bottle it and give it to everybody. And they don't know. Most of them don't even know they don't know. They think that that person has been blessed by some emotional or capricious God to do things a little different. Not true. Their subconscious mind is programmed a little different. Now here's what you want to do. You've got to ask yourself, what do you really want? What do you really want? This is what you're here for. Some of you have traveled long distances. And you'll sit here and you'll gather this information. What do you really want? See, it's not more information that you want. What do you really want? Because until you figure it out, you probably won't change the paradigm. When you figure it out, that's when you'll shift the paradigm. Now think of this for a moment. We're living in a new economy. The economy we were raised in is not the economy we're living in. Yet in the new economy, an individual can turn their annual income into a monthly income. They literally can. Now this can be accomplished by having multiple sources of income. Wealthy people historically have always had multiple sources of income. They haven't had just one or two. Now think of this for a moment. Our world is changing. Yet it's changing at a very rapid clip. The world's not getting bigger, the world's getting smaller. We work all over the world. In a couple of weeks, I got to do a meeting down in San Diego, one day. The next day, I've got to do a meeting in London, England. It wasn't too long ago, that would have been unheard of. We're not a long ways from anywhere. We can go around the world. I do it a few times a year. Do you know you can have business all over the world? You can. I do. Harv does. Many people here do. You can. Yeah, anyone can. Now, if you're going to wait until you figure out how, it ain't going to happen. It's based on a decision. This is what I'm going to do. And you do that, and it starts happening. Now, this is a very important graphic, and I really want you to pay attention to it. Your results are an expression of your level of awareness. What do I mean by that? Well, a person that suffers from headaches, they're not suffering from headaches because they enjoyed a headache. They're suffering from headaches because they're not aware of how to eliminate the headache. Yet it's their head. They made it ache, they can make it stop. They're not a head, they have a head. You never hear anyone say, am head. It's my head. If I make my head ache, I can make my head stop. Now, let the little dot in the center of the screen represent your level of awareness. That represents your level of awareness. Just think of how your results could change if your awareness just expanded that much. Think of this. A person doesn't earn $100,000 a year because they want $100 a year. They're earning $100 a year because they're not aware of how to earn $100 a month. Once they become aware of how to earn $100 a month, they're not going to go back to $100 a year. Awareness isn't memory. I can look and I see a woman in the front row, I see a man in the front row. I'm aware of the difference. You'll say, well, Bob, that's brilliant. Everybody's aware of that. No, everybody isn't. Babies are not aware of the difference in the female personality, female body, male personality, and male body. They have to develop that awareness. Yet, unfortunate, at a very early stage, we put a lid on that, yet then we flip over and start to focus on intellect. Yet it's important we understand what 2 plus 2 is. But it's not as important as we understand awareness. So the question becomes, how do I expand my level of awareness? Well, of course, you're doing it here this weekend. Now, there's other people in Aspen that are not doing it, but you're doing it because it has to do with education. You see, as we start to understand this, our awareness starts to expand. It's through effective education. Now, there's a lot of education that's not effective. We're talking about effective education combined with professional coaching over a reasonable period of time will expand a person's level of awareness. Now, just see, as the awareness expands, it'll never go back. This is what we're after. We want to continually work at this. We want to continually work at expanding our level of awareness. Now, you see, you don't have to know how to do something to decide to do it. As a matter of fact, until you decide, you're never going to figure out how to do it. And if you want to develop your awareness, you make up your mind right now that this is going to be an important subject for you. This is vitally important. You see, when we say this is what I want, and we make a decision to do it, let's understand that we're operating on a certain frequency of thought because we think on frequencies. Now, the thing we want to do is on a higher frequency. Yet we're not going to move to that frequency until we make a decision to do it. The second we make a decision, I'm going to do this, you'll flip onto a higher frequency. There's a number of you that had put a deposit on a house when you didn't know where the balance of the down payment was going to come from on closing day. But you made a decision you're going to have it, and you've got it. I have a friend of mine in Columbus, Ohio, Pat Kearns Davis. Does anybody here know Pat? Somebody must know her. She's a RE/MAX broker in Columbus. When she was 19, she wanted to buy a house. And she was told 19-year-old girls couldn't buy houses. That statement probably changed her life. She said, is that right? Well, today she owns around 300 houses. I asked her one time, how'd you meet your husband? She said, I met him at a party. He asked me what I did, and I said, I buy houses. Do you want to buy a house with me? That's true. Today they have 5 kids in the same house. He manages all the property. She made up her mind 19-year-old girls can buy houses, and she never stopped buying them. You see, when we make a decision, what follows is the awareness, because we've decided this is going to happen, and we don't ever give any thought to why it won't, and then the awareness will start to flow. It's really kind of nice how it happens. Now look at, let that little circle represent your bank. MSI represents multiple sources of income. I was flying to Kuala Lumpur a number of years ago, back around 1990, and I was thinking, what's the difference in wealthy people and people that are having difficulty? And when I'm on a plane, I have a little calculator that I always carry, so I either play with numbers or words. And so I wrote $1 million at the top of the page, and I had earned $1 million years and years ago, and I thought, no, what's the difference? Then I started to think of other wealthy people I knew, yet it suddenly dawned on me, they don't have one income, they have a whole bunch of them. I thought they have multiple incomes. And I wrote down, and then I wrote down multiple sources, and then we changed it to MSI. I got off the plane in Kuala Lumpur, and I phoned Mark Victor Hansen down in southern Florida. He phoned Jack. Jack phoned Lee Pools up in Vancouver. At any rate, we're going to put on a meeting, and we're going to teach people to earn $1 million. Yet we're going to teach them how to set up multiple sources of income. It was in that seminar, I think, in Hawaii, that the Chicken Soup for the Soul books came. Bob Allen picked up the idea, he just called it multiple streams, but he'll tell you that's where he got it. And you see, it came by thinking, how do people become wealthy? They have multiple sources. You can just adding sources of income. You see, money, you don't earn money by working. You get satisfaction from working. We go to work for satisfaction. That's why it's so important we spend our days doing what we love doing. Yeah, it's got nothing to do necessarily with earning money. If you can earn money at it, that's a plus. But you want to set up multiple sources. So you just keep setting up multiple sources of income. Yeah, it's a neat concept. And you can keep doing it. And there's no end to it. You can just keep setting them up. Yet you set them up all over the place. And the beauty is they all flow into your bank. And you can take that money and do whatever you want with it. Now, you say, are they all the same size? That looks like a Ferris wheel. No, they're not all the same size. You're going to find some of them are going to be really great and some of them are not that great. But they all flow to the same place. So if we make up our mind, we're going to help everyone feel a little better. We're going to leave everyone we come in contact with the impression of increase. What's going to come back to us? We're going to have good stuff coming back. And then the last part is on gratitude. We should sit down and be truly grateful for everything that comes into our life. We really should. A good way to start, yes, to take a look at what you've got in your life. There's so much good in your life now. You could start thinking of the friends you've got. Start thinking of the health you got. I was 73 last Thursday. I got more energy than most people, 23. You see? Yeah. I have absolutely no intentions of slowing down. I figure if my heart can go at warp speed, so can I. I mean, he's been doing it a little longer than me. But you see, age should have nothing to do with this. Yet our mental attitude, it's where we're going and what we're doing. And if we fall in love with the idea of improving in everything we do, now you're going to get criticized. You will always get criticized if you're out cutting a new path. And if you let the critics control you, you are done. I watch what Harv has done in this industry because I watched him start. I've watched a lot of people in this industry over 39 years. I know where the dead are buried. I see them come and I see them go. Yet I'm familiar with the ones that stay. You got a real top performer coming up here yet today. Well, there's a couple of them. But we want to ask ourselves, how can I put more out? And we're going to find if we become truly grateful for what we've got, we're so happy about our health, our relationships, the work we're doing, the way we're spending our days. We get into such a phenomenal vibration, you've got to attract good stuff to you. And then it just keeps getting better. Now, remember this saying. I love it. I picked it up a long time ago. The main thing, yes, to keep the main thing, the main thing. Now, we're going to ask ourselves, what is the main thing? Well, I believe the main thing is our lifestyle. I really, truly do. We get one bite at the apple. So far as we know, this is it. We've got one life. Yet we can really live it, or we can just put in time. But if we give it everything we've got, and then I believe if you get money in the right slot, really understand it. Understand what it's for. Absolutely refuse to let it control you. You control it. Money makes a terrible master, but one of the best servants that you're ever going to find. Yet when you hear people say, well, I don't want money, I just want to help people do good. I like what Waddell said in The Science of Getting Rich. If you want to help people, get rich first. Because the good you can do without money is confined to your own physical presence. With money, you can extend the good that you do far beyond your own physical presence. Do you know, in studying this, I've talked about money for a long time. I hear Harv, I was I don't know, somewhere I just was recently, and I heard him, and he was really pounding this area. Not a lot of people do. And they don't because the masses try and shut you down. When you hear people say money won't make you happy, that's generally a defense mechanism of a poor person. It really is. Yet it was never meant to make you happy. Money's meant to make you comfortable. You know, when somebody says money's not meant to make you happy, or money's not going to make you happy, you want to tell them they can't drive around town in a refrigerator either. And they're going to look at you rather strange and say, well, if you want to get involved in ridiculous statements, I might as well share one. You see, refrigerators are meant to preserve food. Money's meant to make you comfortable. It's not meant to make you happy. Yet, if we stop and ask ourselves what we're really capable of doing, then understand we need a team. We cannot do it alone. We absolutely must have a team. Do you know, in Think and Grow Rich, I took I've taken many paragraphs out of there and burned them into my mind, but there's one that Carnegie gave Hill. He said, the accumulation of great fortune calls for power. Yet power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. But, he said, that knowledge does not necessarily have to be yet in the possession of the person who accumulates the fortune. You can get other people to help you. And there's all kinds of people just waiting and wanting to help you. But you may have to ask them. And you've got to have an objective. You've got to have a big picture that you're going after. Something that's absolutely huge. And if you really want to get into studying something, make a decision that you're going to study you. We're not taught how to make decisions in school. We're not taught to earn money, and we're not taught how to make decisions. Decision is when we give ourselves a command and follow it. Say, this I will do. And we don't have to know how to do it. We only have to know we're going to do it. So as you get into this, you're going to start to study into yourself, and that's really where the key is. But remember the concept of paradigm. The paradigm is the program that's in your subconscious mind that has absolutely nothing to do with the intellect. You could be the smartest person on the mountain and still lose. You could be functionally illiterate and still win if you got the paradigm working for you. I obviously have enjoyed myself here. I want to leave you with a quote and a poem. We've put Born Rich books out for everyone. Hopefully you got one. All right, thank you. You know, it's an interesting thing about that book. When I first wrote it, I got a rejection slip from New York that I saved because it was so neatly typed. And it was on a letterhead, and it said, this book is absurd. Now, at the same time, a real estate agent in Toronto bought it, did not read it, took it to Montreal, and gave it to a man. That man bought 50,000 copies of it. I really liked him. But in the book, I put a poem. And the poem is based on a quote that Emerson shared with us, or some wisdom that he shared in his essay on self-reliance. If you haven't read Emerson's essays, you should get into them. They're mind expanding. But he said, in every person's education, there'll come a point where they'll realize that envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. For me to look at you getting great results and to envy you is to say, I don't really understand what you've done. I don't understand. I don't understand that you used a mental faculty that I have, that you tapped into a power that flows through me. It got results that I just wish for. I don't understand that. He said envy is ignorance. Then he said imitation is suicide. For me to try and be like you is absurd. You and I are both unique parts of the whole scheme of things. Nothing in this universe would move in the precise order it moves in our absence. Now think about that for a little while. Yet it's all wrapped up in a beautiful little poem called The One and Only You. Now as I go through this, stop taking notes for a moment and listen real carefully. And I want you to take your energy and focus it on yourself. It says every single blade of grass, yet every flake of snow is just a wee bit different. There's no two alike, you know. From something small like grains of sand to each gigantic star, each one was made with this in mind, to be just what they are. How foolish then to imitate. Yet how useless to pretend when each one of us comes from a mind whose ideas never end. There'll only be just one of me to show what I can do. And likewise, you should be really proud that there's only one of you, because that's where it all begins, with you, a wonderful, unlimited human being. If you have children, make sure you talk to Doug Maharg before you go. He's got a great program that he's putting together for kids, and they need it. I want to thank Harv and Gail and all their team. They've got a phenomenal team. To put something like this together is mind-boggling. You know, as I look at you and think of what they've done, I'm thinking, how did they ever do it? Well, they did it because they decided they were going to do it, and all the pieces come together. So I want to congratulate them, and I really want to thank them for inviting me to be a part of this. This is one of those pivotal points in my life and in my career that I really have enjoyed. So thank you very much. God bless.